Hi Daz, I'm the producer of The Drift, and today it's been 2 years since The Drift was officially started. Not 2 years since the first diary, but 2 years today that I decided that I was going to make this film. Well, technically I suppose it's been slightly longer than 2 years, because today's the first day that I actually emailed all the my sort of core group and said, right, let's make a movie, what do you think? So either way, this is kind of a 2-year anniversary, and it's been and continues to be a long old road making this film. So the last sort of couple of days I've taken a bit of time out. The visual effects guys have been working on a few bits and bobs, and we've extended the deadline, so I've had a bit of sort of time off, as it were, almost. And I watched a documentary yesterday called Side by Side, which my mum suggested I watch, which is nice, and I'm not going to start talking about what it was about, other than to say that it was about making films in the digital age. And that really sort of struck a chord with me in two ways, and it's connected to The Drift. I mean, the first thing is that the digital age, being able to edit on computers, has allowed us to accelerate our filmmaking capability, and the sort of screens you've got behind me, you've got Geriatric Park, which was filmed in 1993, and that was filmed on tapes. It wasn't filmed digitally. We had to have two tape decks and copy them across and use a thing called audio dub, which was designed for voiceover on more expensive video recorders that you could buy, and we would put the music across on that, and we had to time it all with CDs. We had to have we used the Jurassic Park music, so we had to have two copies of the CD and put them together, and we had to get a mixer and mix it live, real time with it. You couldn't do it before or anything like that. And then in sort of '99, the digital age became more affordable. We had digital cameras, and we started to edit on computers as well. And it was still difficult, and that's when we started doing Star Wars and stuff like that. So that was in terms of documentary and where we've come forward with The Drift, which you've got there. The digital age has really helped. But the other thing that was really interesting, actually a couple of other things that was interesting. First is that the industry totally gets what we're doing, or certainly that's the perception of this documentary. And bearing in mind that you've got Martin Scorsese, George Lucas, Boyle Rodriguez, lots of sort of high-profile directors, and there was certainly some very experienced cinematographers, DPs and stuff being interviewed as well, talking about this digital revolution, both on the industry level primarily, about using digital cameras and whether they're better or worse than film, but also what that digital capability is doing to the rest of the world, for the rest of the world, people like us. And they're getting it. They understand what we're doing. Now, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing is very subjective. Some of them think it's great. You can't have too many films. Some people say, well, you're saturating an environment. And even I have my own worries about things like YouTube, which you're probably watching this on right now. But how many people are actually watching this, and what are they watching instead, and what are the audiences missing out on because of a saturated environment? You go to the cinema, you see generally a high quality production that, in terms of storytelling, acting, and cinematography, sound. If you go on YouTube, you can end up watching a complete pile of crap. However, you may enjoy that complete pile of crap, and that's okay. But it could mean that you're missing out on other things. And it also certainly seems now, with the digital revolution, perhaps, that films come and go so quickly that you spend 2 years, like we have so far on The Drift, for a movie to come out, and in the old days it was 15 minutes of fame. Now it might be 15 seconds of fame, because films that are coming out this summer people have already forgotten about. Man of Steel, Pacific Rim. If you're a certain demographic and they're your movies, then they might be in your mindset perhaps a little bit longer. But as far as the industry is concerned, as far as the mainstream media is concerned, as soon as one movie is out, quick bit on Graham Norton, quick bit on Jonathan Ross show, premiere comes out, move on to the next movie, because there are just so many coming out. So it's not perhaps just about being saturated on YouTube or on the internet, but even at the cinema. There's just so much coming out. perhaps it's nostalgia, perhaps it's me just going, oh, in the good old days. But when I was a lad, you know, I remember when Return of the Jedi came out, Back to the Future. It was a really big deal. You know, Back to the Future was the big summer blockbuster movie. That was it. You know, there was nothing else coming out that year, or nothing else as big as that. Same with Return of the Jedi, the Superman movies. You know, and you would go to cinema perhaps 2 or 3 times to see that film because it was so good, and there was generally no other way of seeing it. So, you know, it was more special. So I don't think it's the argument about digital versus film that they come up with about one is better quality than the other. I think there's more to it than that. I think it isn't just about digitisation of the film. It's about the digital revolution generally, and the internet revolution generally is affecting us. So, so that was the sort of the second thing of the 3 things. And the third one, which was quite good to see, was directors like Danny Boyle, Rodriguez, who were using domestic camcorders, exactly the same ones that we've been using, or near as damn it, for their movies. They're not for their big movies, obviously, but they were testing it, they were using it and playing with it, and talking about, one of the great bits was 28 Days Later. They were talking about closing down London early in the morning to film some stuff, and because they were shooting it digitally, they were able to have lots more cameras because they were cheaper. It's exactly what we've done on The Drift. You know, when we were filming on The Drift, for different reasons perhaps, you know, we would have generally at least 3 cameras for every shot. For every take we did, there were 3 cameras, sometimes 4. Because our issues were not so much about, well, it was the same actually, it was about time. They only had a certain amount of time to film in London before, you know, they had to finish to let the rest of the world, you know, get back on with its life. And we only had 12 days to film. So although the reasons were different, the issue was the same, a lack of time. So that was quite nice to see that that even these sort of big time directors and that, you know, are getting, you know, what we're doing. So that's good. So that was a nice sort of thing to sort of look at while I was having a bit of time off. And then the next sort of thing I started thinking about was about our own film production. It was quite sort of inspiring to watch, to know that they know what we're doing, as it were, and thinking about what we're doing in the future with, you know, with The Drift, you know, with Starlight and stuff like that. That, you know, we're not a surprise to the industry. Whether we're any good or not is different, and that's a whole different. You know, having a digital camera, for example, doesn't mean you can build a set like that. You know, that requires people to build a set. You know, they were building sets like that right from the beginning of filmmaking, so that's not changed. But nonetheless, it was inspirational to sort of watch and make me feel good about the movie. So in terms of where do we go now with The Drift, The Drift is still moving forward, 2 years into it, and you know, it's a long old slog, and it's continuing to be a long old slog. And I think one of the fundamental reasons, 2 reasons. One is it's just hard. You know, this is, as I've said before, it's, you know, visual effects are intensive. Making it 2-hour movies, you know, is difficult. It's all hard work. But the other thing is that as much as in the real world they take 2 years, 18 months, whatever it is to make a film, they've got guys working 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, you know, 40 hours a week. And we've probably best got, each artist, I would suspect, is probably not even working 20 hours a month, generally. Now that's not to say that some of them aren't working harder than others or working more hours than others, and I know that, and that's not to get them. What I'm saying is that just from a pure numbers point of view, just from the amount of hours it will take to make this film, if it takes 10,000 hours, either you do it 8 hours a day, it will take a shorter period of time overall, as in chronologically, or you do an hour a week, and it's going to take years to do. It still takes 10,000 hours, or whatever it is. It's however many people you can get into do it, how many hours they can devote. You know, and these people aren't doing it for a job. They're doing it for fun. They're doing it because they want to showcase their capability. But while they're doing that, they've also got to have a life, as in they've got to go to work, or they've got to go to university. You know. Or they've got to have a family life, and those things are important too. And in the industry, they have a family life, and they go to work. It's just that when they go to work, they go to work making a film. I suppose that's the ideal if that's what you want. So we don't have that. So that's what makes it takes a long time. Simple numbers. So I don't get too depressed about that, because when I start looking at footage like this, especially from where we've come from, where we're going, you know, the fact is we are making films. And sort of go back to the documentaries, perhaps one point they did bring up was that because the costs were coming down with digital production, there were less investors, there were less suits, as they were quoting, you know, and the less suits you have, the more creativity you can have, because there's less pressure, less risk, less investment. So you're producing almost an equal shot for a lot less money, which gives you as a filmmaker a lot more creativity. And that's exactly what we have, because we don't have any investors, none. You know, it's all about what we're doing as a group. So we have complete creative control. We can choose when the film's ready, if we like a shot, we don't like a shot, we like to take a story, whatever we want, we have that choice. There's no one with a financial angle telling us what we can and cannot do. And I think only by going into the professional, as in the paid commercial industry, would anyone really appreciate the freedom they had when they weren't in there. And I'm trying to appreciate that now. I'm trying to appreciate with the guys that we've got, that, you know, we're choosing what we do. You know, that's a good thing. I think the last thing to sort of think about, I suppose, is one of the comments, I think it was Martin Scorsese said on this documentary, which is, you know, the advent of digital photography and everyone having access to this equipment, you know, doesn't mean you're going to get a whole pile of great movies or bad movies or whatever. We've had pens and pencils and paper for thousands of years. You know, it doesn't mean everybody can write a brilliant script. So, by the same token, just because everyone's got all the gear, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be making fantastic movies. And I get that, but I would add to that is that perhaps now there are people in the world who don't have access to pencils and paper in the world, and there actually are good script writers, but they can't write a good script because they don't have the tools. And the same might be for filmmakers, that there may be filmmakers out there and have been lost in time simply because they didn't have the technology or the capability in terms of kit to actually make that vision, to create that movie, and now they do.